talking today about burnout. Now, there have been many surveys come out, especially in the last year and a half, that speaks to burnout factors, whether those are burnout cases or risk of burnout, and even looking at gender components. So women in particular have been at high risk for burnout, if not suffering from burnout. So we want to talk today about some components and some solutions around burnout. So if you are already resonating with this video, then let's begin to look at the fact that if you are not preserving your time and your energy for the top priorities in your life, whether that's in your work, whether that's in your family or your community, then you are not going to be able to show up fully for other people. So when you take care of your own energy and time, then you are able to show up fully and be present with who you are with and what projects you are doing, instead of showing up being exhausted, being scatterbrained, and feeling pulled every which way. So one thing I really want to point out is sometimes what happens is we begin to project that stress onto other people. And something I've realized in my own personal life is it's never on anybody else, or it's never anybody else's fault if I haven't preserved my own time and energy. So in the past, I might show up and go, "Oh, I'm so tired. I can't believe you've asked me to do this." There was a victim mentality from that. But begin to look at that you are the captain of your own life. You can empower your own decisions and choices. And if you are making decisions and choices that are spreading you thin and draining your time and energy, then that comes back to you. It is not on anybody else's it's not anybody else's responsibility to preserve your time and energy. So just be aware of that and be mindful of that. Sometimes I think we just subconsciously operate in that way, of that it's somebody else's job to take care of our own time and energy. So first of all, taking ownership of your own time and energy is really, really important, because nothing's going to change on a burnout level if you are not taking ownership of yourself and how you're spending your time and energy. And then the second point of that is prioritizing what you want to, make a list, start to prioritize what's most important to you in your life, and make a list across the board. So that might be within your home and your personal life, within your workspace, within your family life, whatever that looks like. Begin to make a list of what's most important to you, and know that's where your time and energy is going to be funneled. So if you're a yes person and you do a lot of things out of obligation, one helpful tip is to begin to weed through those and know that you don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to do things out of obligation. If you're doing that, recognize that as a personal choice. Are you feeling valuable in those settings? Are you feeling fulfilled? Are you feeling purposeful? Now, you might feel like you're of value and you might feel purposeful, but if you are feeling drained from obligations and saying yes to too much, then begin to consider that you're not really being fulfilled and sustained. Actually, you're having your energy drained. It's almost like a suck out of your whole body and mind. And so if you are being drained, if you are putting out more than you're getting in, then that's something to sit down and really assess, because I want you to think of it as currency. So energy is currency, what goes out and what comes in. And it might be also a mental energy. Oftentimes our mental energy can be more draining than even physical energy. So if you are saying yes or doing obligations that you're showing up to and you're feeling really mentally drained, and you go back home and you're just wiped out, then just consider that that may be an emotional or a mental drain, and it can be even more impactful than even a physical drain. Because sometimes we think of just being drained energetically, physically, like if we go have a really hard workout, or we have a labor intensive job or something like that. Well, our mental and our emotional capacity is just as important to look at. So begin to look at your priorities in your life And then don't be afraid. So the third tip is don't be afraid to begin to cut some of the things that aren't fulfilling you, aren't an equal energetic exchange, so that you're not getting a lot out of, but you're putting a lot into. Don't be afraid of starting to tie up those yeses or those obligations. And a really simple thing is saying, this isn't working for my time and energy anymore. I wish you well, but I'm having to go a different direction. And you don't ever owe anybody an explanation on that, especially if you are really saying yes and doing things out of obligation, volunteering, any of those types of things. Oftentimes we tend to over explain why, yada, yada, yada. But you don't have to over explain, because what we're looking for is relationships that are going to support you creating some boundaries and taking care of yourself. And if you have people in your life that are really trying to twist your arm, guilting you, shaming you for not doing something that they want you to do, but you're feeling really drained from that, then that's something to begin to assess as well, because that could be potentially a draining relationship in your life that is sucking the energy out of you, and that's what can also lead to burnout. So it doesn't mean you don't have to have that relationship in your life, but maybe start to minimize that and begin to put in more fulfilling activities, relationships, quiet time, whatever that might be, more of that, and then maybe less of that relationship. And yes, that might bother people, but again, you are responsible for your own perseverance when it comes to your time and energy. So when you start to take ownership of that, and if you haven't in the past, yes, it may ruffle some feathers, but you can begin to tell your relationships that are supportive of you taking care of yourself, that are supportive of your self-care. Because think of it as whenever you get on an airplane and the staff comes around and asks you to put on your mask before you put on the mask of a child or a dependent. Why do they do that? Because if you don't have your own oxygen mask, if you don't have your own life force coming in, you can't put on a mask for a child. You're done. So think of it in that capacity. If you are not creating your own life force and putting things into yourself that is sustaining you, and you're trying to put more out, again, in a currency way, in an energetic way, then it's not sustainable. And that's a third thing we're looking at when we're looking at burnout factors, is how do you keep doing the things that you want to do, whether that's your job, whether that's parenting, whether that's community work, whatever that is, maybe that's a partnership. How do you keep those things sustainable? And the key to that is making sure that you are recharged, refreshed, feeling supported. And those are all things that you can do for yourself, that you take ownership of. Again, it's not on anybody else to do that for you, because you are able to find resources and support, hone into the relationships, the activities that bring you up, bring you joy, fulfill you, sustain you.